Well, it's nearly midnight, and it's just started to gently rain, and I thought I would invite you to join me as I just sort of ramble through the process of painting kind of a silly self-portrait. This whole painting only took me 45 minutes to finish. And I think part of the reason I was able to do this quickly is that right before I started this painting, I had just been working on a very sort of detailed and careful study of a famous Van Dyck painting. And I've had this happen before where I've been really focused intently on doing a study of a master painting and sort of really honed in on the small details and focused on that level, and then gone to take a break and then sort of had the energy to start another painting, and found that after that intense focus there's sort of an energy that wants to just sort of cut loose and paint very loosely and quickly. And when that happened in the past, I was able to finish a portrait of my friend in roughly 45 minutes as well, and it had such a freshness to it that I sort of didn't even know I was capable of. So I think there's something in that where if you sort of warm up on one level, it can then sort of free you to work in a much more loose and expressive way. I'm a big fan of Anthony Van Dyck and Peter Paul Rubens and so many of those amazing Dutch painters. I've been watching or re-watching some of those great documentaries by Valdemar Januszczak, which are on YouTube. And the way he presents art history and shares his passion, it's so engaging. And I know I'm not the only person who's had the sense that if they'd had an art teacher like that when they were growing up, they would have, been bitten by the art bug much earlier. And one of the things I think is interesting that you see in those very aristocratic portraits is so much character captured in them, and there's often a really sort of delightful arrogance that comes through in some of those kings and rulers. So when I was playing around with taking a few photos of myself to use for this self-portrait, one of them stood out to me. I just sort of tilted my chin up slightly, and I had a slightly kind of smug expression, and that was something that I kind of responded to and decided to really lean into and play up in this portrait. So I sort of caricatured myself, and it's not really the greatest likeness, but I feel like there is a fun attitude that comes through. I really enjoy using just a neutral grey as a starting point for painting on. It means that any colour that you put on top of it, if it's in the shadow or the light family, you get a very clear sense of sort of where it sits in the value range. Whereas painting on a white canvas can be a bit tricky because everything else looks darker compared to the stark white background. I'm also having fun. I'd been working on a landscape painting earlier, so I had some blue on my palette, which when I'm doing portraits I don't generally use much blue, but I thought it'd be fun to really play up some of the color temperature changes. So I decided to put those streaks of blue in where my stubble would be. And yeah, I'm just starting to put in some red tones now, and it's amazing how those colors can harmonize while being so far apart. This whole painting was done with 2 brushes as well, and mostly with one very soft watercolor brush. But it had sort of just enough stiffness to it that I was able to get in and paint small details at the level that I wanted to for this portrait. And the other one I used was a very cheap and very rough hog bristle, and I'm definitely a scrubby kind of painter. Same with drawing. I always have such messy lines, so it's great to have a brush that is sort of ready for that kind of abuse. And you can probably see around the edges of the canvas on the right and down the bottom. There's another painting underneath this one kind of peeking through. That was another study I'd done, but then decided I had, learned what I needed to from it and didn't need to keep that canvas. I sort of have a feeling of, if I'm not really satisfied with the painting that's on a canvas, I'd rather reuse it until I look at it and have a feeling of satisfaction. And sometimes I've gone back to old paintings and thought, oh, I could do so much better than that now. But then there's something in me that still responds to that work, and it's sort of like the painting is telling me, no, hang on to me, don't paint over me. That's the feeling I'm looking for. That's how I know something is finished. It speaks to you. That's something I've found with studying old master paintings as well, is there's so many amazing images you can find online, really high resolution scans of paintings and really high quality images. And when you zoom into these paintings, I really get this sense that if you pay attention, they tell you how they were made. Not that I haven't researched a lot about techniques and the processes used by artists. But I guess that's really what we look for with art. We want something to speak to us. anytime we make art, we're sort of engaging in a conversation with the whole human history of creativity. And there's that tired hog bristle brush earning its keep. So that's my quick, smug self-portrait done. I just added my signature at the bottom. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.